How the greatest legends of the Wild West died. Johnny Ringo has become one of the most enduring figures of the Old West, not because he led grand armies or built great empires, but because he embodied the raw, volatile frontier spirit at its most dangerous edge. A feared gunslinger and a close ally of the Clanton faction in Tombstone, Arizona Territory, Ringo's name looms large in Wild West lore. He stands as a symbol of lawlessness and personal vendetta, a man whose reputation for a quick draw and icy demeanor helped solidify the myth of the Western outlaw. His circle of rivalries, most famously with Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, placed him at the heart of one of the era's bloodiest feuds, while his mysterious end beneath a mesquite tree ensured that questions about justice and retribution would echo for generations. Early years in wanderlust. Born John Peters Ringo around 1850 in Greens Fork, Wayne County, Indiana, Johnny was the eldest son of a prosperous farming family. Trails of hardship and opportunity soon lured the young Ringo westward. In the mid-1860s, he drifted through Kansas and Texas, working as a ranch hand, stagecoach guard, and itinerant cowboy. His natural ease with a six-shooter earned him a reputation among drovers. Tales circulated of his lightning-fast draw and unshakable nerve, though many accounts blurred fact and frontier gossip. By the early 1870s, he was known well enough to draw attention when he rode into Cochise County, Arizona, a man drawn into feud. Cochise County in the 1870s was a tinderbox of clashing interests. Cattle barons, outlaw gangs, U.S. Marshals, and Confederate sympathizers all jostled for advantage in the lawless territory. Ringo gravitated toward the Clanton family, who controlled a ranch near present-day Tombstone and used it as a base for rustling operations. Under the influence of Old Man Clanton and his sons Ike and Finn, Ringo became a trusted ally, sharing in cattle dealings by day and brooding over more personal disputes by night. These disputes would draw him into a simmering war with town marshal Virgil Earp, his deputy brothers Morgan and Warren, and the ever-unstable Doc Holliday, whose intermittent friendship with Ringo combined admiration and outright loathing. A reputation carved in gunmetal, Ringo's fame rested on both fact and fiction. He was said to stand over 6 feet tall, with steel-gray eyes and a shock of dark hair. His skill with 2 pistols made him as formidable in a one-on-one duel as he was in a crowd gunfight. Witnesses claimed he never missed a vital shot, though few survived his wrath to confirm every detail. Newspapers from Tucson to San Francisco ran lurid stories of Ringo's exploits, some true, some wildly exaggerated, and all served to cement his image as a man who lived by the gun. Yet those who knew him spoke of a soft-spoken gambler, prone to sudden fits of rage when crossed or insulted, and equally quick to walk away once he felt the odds had turned against him. Tombstone's brewing storm. In the fall of 1881, tensions in Tombstone reached a breaking point. The Earps, newly arrived as lawmen, began to clamp down on outlaw activity. Johnny Ringo, riding with Ike Clanton's men, openly taunted the marshals, issuing challenges and exchanging heated letters that found their way into local newspapers. A minor brawl at the Birdcage Theater escalated into a series of near shootings. Behind the scenes, Doc Holliday, once friendly with Ringo, turned informant for the Earps, deepening Ringo's sense of betrayal. Each affront piled upon the last. Accusations of horse theft, threats to family honor, and rumors of ambushes. By spring 1882, the stage was set for violence on either side. The mysterious death, on July 14th, or the early morning of July 15th, 1882, Johnny Ringo's body was found beneath a mesquite tree on the slopes of the Chiricahua Mountains, about 30 miles northeast of Tombstone. He lay face up, head resting on his saddle, with a single bullet wound behind his right ear and no pistol in his hand. A leather cartridge belt lay nearby, but his Colt revolvers were missing. The official coroner's inquest ruled the death a suicide, an assertion that many contemporaries and later historians have questioned. No note was found. His pockets held gambling tokens, a neatly folded handkerchief, and a handful of coins, suggesting nothing more than routine business or a late-night ride gone wrong. Suicide or silenced man. Suspicion of foul play swirls around Ringo's demise. Some tales claim Wyatt or Morgan Earp tracked and executed him in cold blood, hiding the weapons to stage a suicide. Others whisper that Buckskin, Frank Leslie, or a remaining Clanton sought vengeance for perceived betrayals. Still others argue that Ringo, haunted by losses and hunted by enemies on all sides, saw no out except to turn his gun on himself. The lack of a suicide note, combined with the missing firearms, lends weight to the murder theory. Yet no eyewitnesses came forward, no confession was ever made, and the coroner's report, compiled by local officials under Earp influence, remains the only formal record. Legacy carved in legend. Whether victim or self-inflicted, Johnny Ringo's death only fueled his legend. His silhouette under that mesquite tree became an icon of the West's moral ambiguity. Writers and filmmakers seized on the story. In dime novels, he was a tragic antihero. In Hollywood, he swung between calculating killer and haunted soul. Modern historians debate the evidence, but agree on one point. Ringo's life and death encapsulate the frontier's brutal final years. He was a man caught between codes of honor and outlaw kinship, whose end underscores the thin line separating vigilante justice from cold-blooded murder. In every retelling, the echo of that single gunshot reminds us how fiercely the Old West lived, and how swiftly it could die. Cole Younger occupies a singular place in the story of the American frontier. He was not merely an outlaw, but a bridge between the chaotic guerrilla conflicts of the Civil War and the rise of the professional gang robberies that would come to define the post-war West. As the eldest younger brother, he provided the steady hand and sense of discipline that held the James, Younger gang together. His actions helped transform bank and train robbery from scattered acts of desperation into headline-grabbing spectacles. And in doing so, he forced both lawmen and the public to reckon with a new kind of criminal, part soldier, part folk hero, who moved with surprising daring in the open daylight. Early life and family loyalties. Thomas Coleman Younger was born on January 15, 1844, in Jackson County, Missouri, where his father's farm sprawled across rolling hills and river bottoms. He was the seventh of 14 children, and from the outset, family meant everything. Missouri in those years was a battleground state, riven by competing loyalties. Young Cole learned early to stand up for his kin, a trait that would mark both his military and criminal careers. His father, a well-to-do farmer, instilled a fierce pride in the household. His mother added a streak of religious devotion that Cole would only come to embrace late in life. From guerrilla to outlaw, when the Civil War erupted, Missouri became a hot spot of brutal guerrilla warfare. Cole's father was killed, reportedly by a stray Union bullet, which drove the young man into the ranks of William Quantrill's bushwhackers. He rode in the notorious raid on Lawrence, Kansas, in August 1863, a night of slaughter and arson that both cemented his reputation for ruthlessness and taught him the value of discipline in a frenzied fight. Though he later claimed to have joined the regular Confederate Army, it was the lawless border raids that shaped his tactics: small units, sudden attacks, and no mercy for those who stood in the way. The rise of the James, Younger gang. After Appomattox, Missouri's new government barred former Confederates from voting or holding office. Many ex-bushwhackers found themselves with few prospects. Cole, along with brothers Jim and Bob, gravitated to the outlaw life. By 1868, they were robbing banks in Russellville, Kentucky, and soon caught the eye of Jesse and Frank James. Together they formed what became known as the James, Younger gang. Cole's military experience made him the gang's enforcer and drill instructor. He taught his comrades to approach robberies with coordinated precision rather than haphazard violence. Their daylight holdups, banks in broad daylight, trains barreling along tracks, turned them into legends almost overnight. The Northfield disaster. Their success came crashing down on September 7, 1876. In Northfield, Minnesota, the gang attempted to rob the First National Bank. Cole stood guard outside while 3 members stormed the vault. But townspeople armed themselves, turning Main Street into a firefight. 2 outlaws died in the street. Bob Younger was cripplingly wounded. Cole himself was hit by 4 bullets. One nearly took his jaw off, another tore through his shoulder blade, and 2 more lodged in his limbs. Rather than see more slaughter, he ordered the survivors to stand down and surrendered. His calm acceptance, refusing to risk civilian lives, earned grudging respect even from his captors. 25 years in Stillwater. Cole and his brothers were sentenced to life in the Minnesota Territorial Prison at Stillwater. Prison life was harsh, but Cole made the most of it. He helped launch the prison newspaper, acted as printer's devil, and even ran the library, reading and copying manuscripts. He corresponded with Southern sympathizers who raised money on his behalf. Over the years, his wounds, he carried 11 unrecovered bullets in his body, became a vivid reminder of his past. Bob died of tuberculosis in 1889. A broken Jim took his own life in 1902. Cole, however, endured. Pardon, memoir, and show business. In 1901, after 25 years behind bars, Cole was pardoned. He emerged a changed man in some ways, yet determined to shape his own narrative. He published a memoir casting himself not as a common criminal, but as a Confederate avenger, a man driven by vengeance into outlawry. He lectured across the South on what my life has taught me, blending tall tales with heartfelt confessions. In 1903, he joined Frank James's Wild West show, striding onto arenas to reenact bank robberies and tell a frontier justice. Audiences flocked to see the living legend, bullet scars on display as proof of his authenticity. Redemption and final years. Despite the spectacle, Cole wrestled privately with regret. On August 21, 1912, exactly 49 years after the Lawrence raid, he declared himself a born-again Christian. He renounced his violent past and sought to make amends, preaching temperance and forgiveness in rural Missouri churches. He returned to the family farm in Lee's Summit, where he built a modest home and kept to a quiet routine of Bible study, gardening, and visits from curious historians. Death and legacy. Cole Younger died in his sleep on March 21, 1916, at the age of 72. His death certificate lists heart failure, exacerbated by chronic kidney issues, ailments likely linked to infections around the bullets still lodged in his body. He was laid to rest in Lee's Summit Historical Cemetery, his coffin followed by former prison guards, Confederate veterans, and curious onlookers who remembered the hard-bitten outlaw turned preacher. To this day, visitors note that steel-gray gaze and the quiet set of his jaw, imagining the youth who once dared to take on banks and armies alike. Cole Younger's life embodies the contradictions of the Old West. He was soldier and criminal, scholar and showman, sinner and redeemed soul. His death closed the chapter on the last of the James Gang's original crew, but his legend endures, a testament to the restless spirit that built, and sometimes broke, the frontier. Jim Bridger was more than a man. He was a living compass by which a continent found its way to the Pacific. In an age when white empires pressed ever westward, it was Bridger's uncanny mastery of mountains and prairies, rivers and passes, that transformed forbidding wilderness into highways of migration and commerce. His name would be whispered in the camps of fur trappers, spoken with awe by wagoneers on the Oregon Trail, and written indelibly across every map that charted America's future. Frontier beginnings and the call of the West. Born James Felix Bridger on March 17, 1804, in Richmond, Virginia, he came of age on the cusp of American expansion. At 16, with nothing but a rifle on his shoulder and an endless horizon in his heart, he slipped away to St. Louis, a rough river town aflame with opportunity. There he joined the Missouri Fur Company, learning the trapper's trade from grizzled veterans who measured their lives by pelts, not years. Winter brought bone-chilling cold and hungry wolves. Summer meant heat, so fierce it could crack gunpowder. Through it all, Bridger laughed in the face of danger, earning the respect of men who had survived blizzards and stampedes, but had never met a youth with quite his unquenchable spirit. Mountain man and trailblazer. In the 1820s and 30s, Bridger roamed farther into the Rockies than nearly any white man before him. He partnered with legends like Jedediah Smith and Hugh Glass, following mule train routes into hidden valleys where beaver thrived. Night after night he slept under the stars, listening to wolves howl and river ice crack. His sinewy frame, honed by hard living, carried him over ridges blanketed in snow and along razorback trails where one misstep plunged a man into an icy crevasse. Yet he never grew soft, never lost that youthful curiosity that led him to claim he had witnessed a lake so vast it swallowed the horizon, and ground that boiled beneath fissures of steam. Reports that most dismissed as fantastical until surveyors confirmed the Great Salt Lake and Yellowstone's geysers decades later. The Pathfinder of the Plains. Bridger's knowledge was not limited to trapping. He began guiding immigrant parties in the early 1840s, and each wagon train that slid past his campfire owed its safe passage to his counsel. He could read a western sky like a book, predicting storms that would drown oxen or searing droughts that would parch entire herds. On one iconic summer morning, he led a group around a flooded river's treacherous currents, saving 20 wagons from destruction. Word spread, follow Bridger or lose your life. His maps, drawn in charcoal on tanned hides, sketched mountain passes so precise that travelers carried them like holy writ. Founding Fort Bridger. In 1843, Bridger partnered with trader Luis Vasquez to establish a simple post on the Green River's banks, where natural springs fed meadows ripe for grazing. What began as a log cabin and lean-to quickly swelled into Fort Bridger, complete with trading stores, workshops, and corrals. Immigrants on the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails converged there, trading buffalo robes and dried buffalo meat for flour, tools, and horses. Native delegates came too, drawn by the promise of goods and the hope of peaceable barter. Under Bridger's hospitable roof, rival groups found neutral ground, though every negotiation held the tension of cultures colliding and destinies entwining. Diplomat and Army Scout. When skirmishes flared in Utah and along the Bozeman Trail, government authorities turned to Bridger for his rare talents. He served as a U.S. Army Scout during the Utah War, 1857-58, and later in Red Cloud's War, 1866-68, guiding columns through enemy-held territory. His unerring eye spotted ambushes before enemies drew their bows. His fluency in Shoshone and Crow allowed peaceful parley where bullets might have flown. He blazed what came to be called Bridger Pass, slicing 60 miles off the main Oregon Trail and later carrying telegraph wires and the Union Pacific Railroad. He carved another route north into Montana, offering prospectors a safer way to gold fields, routes that would evolve into today's highways and rail lines. The storyteller's twilight. By the late 1860s, the mountain man way of life was fading. Beaver hats fell from fashion, the railroads advanced inexorably, and Bridger's eyesight began to dim. Yet as the frontier changed, his legend only grew. Settled near Westport, now part of Kansas City, he hosted visitors hungry for first-hand tales. He would lean back in a rocking chair, pipe in hand, and recount how he escaped a band of Ute warriors by masquerading as one of their scouts, or how he once cached $10,000 worth of pelts beneath a boulder in Devil's Tower. Sometimes his listeners doubted the more outrageous anecdotes, but when surveyors later visited Yellowstone's geyser basins or traced the course of Bridger Pass, they found his words were as solid as the stone markers he'd left behind. Final years and quiet departure. On a humid summer morning, July 17, 1881, Jim Bridger's long journey came to its end. He died peacefully on his farm outside Kansas City at the age of 77, worn by decades of hardship, yet unbowed in spirit. His death went largely unremarked in national papers. For the nation's eye had already turned to steel rails and urban skylines. He was laid to rest in Westport Cemetery beneath a modest headstone. Yet in the hearts of old trappers, scouts, and immigrant families, a chapter of frontier history closed with his passing. Re-interment and monument. In 1904, on the centennial of his birth, mountain men and civic leaders gathered to honor Bridger with a true memorial. His remains were moved to Mount Washington Cemetery in Independence, Missouri, where a 7-foot granite shaft now stands, emblazoned with his name and iconic likeness. It is said that on still mornings, one can almost hear the creak of wagon wheels and the whisper of geese along the Green River, as though Bridger himself still watches over the trails he first made safe. Enduring legacy. More than a century after his death, Jim Bridger's legacy endures in every peak's name, every pass trodden, and every town that bears his imprint. Fort Bridger, Wyoming, Bridger-Teton National Forest, Bridger Pass, and the Bridger Range in Montana all serve as living landmarks to his vision and daring. His life bridged two eras, the lawless trapping grounds of the early republic and the iron-anchored rails of modern America. In every way, Jim Bridger remains the embodiment of the frontier's restless spirit, an explorer whose footprints still guide us through the vast tapestry of the American West.